Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for the invitation. The Fundamental Rights Agency already has a good relationship with the ETUC, and this is the chance to deepen it. I really welcome the way you frame the conference. Social justice, democracy, human rights, fairness, all interconnected. And that's what human rights is all about. While we have serious problems I'll come to in just a moment, we have to also acknowledge what we have in Europe. We have a strong system of guarantees, including in the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights, which is celebrating its 10th anniversary in force this year. But we're also in deep trouble. I've been here just 20 minutes, and I've already heard so much about some of the persistent, unacceptable situations we find. These are human rights abuses, human rights violations. What I didn't hear mention of, but maybe it's because somebody might have spoken earlier, is we don't just have a problem of human rights abuses in Europe today, we have a problem of people walking away from the human rights system. We have leaders in too many places saying, I do not accept the commitments. We have politicians who are saying the old values are no use, we need new values that take the place of fundamental values like human dignity. And frankly, in the last few days, what I've seen is some leaders with values that are no bigger than self-interest. So we have to push back. And if I may, maybe the main value this afternoon for me is to suggest how we can all push back, trade unionists with everybody else. And I'd like to propose to the participants today to fight for 4 Europes. The first one, of course, is social Europe. We need to achieve the social and economic rights that have been neglected historically in the European Union. We need to make sure that the pillar of social rights has teeth and meaning and gives equal status to social rights as political rights. Second, but just as important, and side by side with the struggle for a social Europe, we need to guarantee a rule of law Europe. We need to make sure that those who push back against human rights and democratic principle are resisted effectively. We need to make sure that the conditions on which countries enter the EU, become its members, apply also for it to be allowed to continue membership. The third of the 4 Europes is we need a truthful Europe. There is far too much currency to lie and misinformation. Too much lie and misinformation is informing debate and ultimately, far more seriously, decision-making. It's time to reassert the need for truth and evidence in debate and in the decisions. And this, among all the other areas, is where the Fundamental Rights Agency can support you, giving you the hard EU 28 member state comparable data to allow you to fight for what is right. And finally, in terms of my 4 Europes, we need to struggle for global Europe, Europe in the world. And here I'm referring to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. They are a game changer for delivering social justice and human rights, and we have to embrace them inside the EU and not just as something to do with external or foreign policy. The last thing I'd say is, during my lunchtime today, while I was preparing my words, I listened to the podcast from this morning, and I listened to a wonderful speech by Victoria Nagy. It was the highlight for me of what you did this morning. And Victoria Nagy reminded all of you that your greatest asset is young people. And that is my experience everywhere I go in Europe today. Young people are not the Europe of the future, they're the Europe of now. And those of us who are not so young have to get off our high horses and recognize only in partnership with the vision, the idealism, and the energy of young people are we going to bring about the Europe of which we dream.
So thank you very much for this. These 4 Europes, that is already a fantastic start for a lively debate. But at one point you said, where we can help you as agency with providing data, providing information. Can you describe how that could work very concretely? I ask that because in the ETUI and ETUC, we started the last 2 years, we had seminars and conferences around xenophobia, racism at workplace, and so on. And that is an issue. It is an issue. But we can only be successful when our member organization, and these colleagues here represent our member organization, when they have access to and support by good information and for the best would be to see an added value in Europe, that a European agency helps concretely at the workplace.
Yep. We have the best data sets on discrimination and harassment across the EU, in particular with regard to minority groups, that exists. It exists on a comparable basis across the 28 EU member states. So when we talk about xenophobia in the workplace, when we talk about racial discrimination of whatever form, when we talk about patterns of harassment and even violence against migrant minorities, but also Roma, LGBT, and many other categories, you can come to the Fundamental Rights Agency and get our EU-wide, but also our driven down national level information. We can give you the hard evidence that you need to justify your claims and your demands. We can do much more than that. We can also give you as a resource our deep research on extreme labor conditions. So for example, in June in Brussels, we will launch a major set of reports on exploitation in the context of extreme labor exploitation. What's that? That's labor that is criminal. We have done in-depth examination from the point of view of the lawmaker, the policymaker, the trade unions, the regulators, but also victims. In one of the 4 volumes we'll publish next month, we have the voices of the victims of exploitation for sexual services, exploitation in the agricultural sector, exploitation on fishery boats. And again, you need the evidence in order to make your cases and to make your claims. And finally, we're forever generating tools. So it's data, research, but also tools to support you and others in working for human rights respectful societies. For example, our legal tools. We need to use human rights law smartly to win the societies that we're entitled to. And again here, we have a big resource at your disposal. Since you asked me the question, let me just say one last thing. And that is that another way you can work with the Fundamental Rights Agency is by working with us. We have a space for cooperation with civil society, which is called the Fundamental Rights Platform. Civil society for us includes the trades unions, but we have a very low participation. You are a registered participant, of course, but we only have a handful of national level trade unions registered on our platform. We'd like to see that increase greatly. We want to develop a much deeper partnership with the trade union movement. We share so many causes in common, and we'll do a better job, all of us, if we work together.
Yeah, thanks a lot, and I hope everybody is now taking notes and that you get really a support by colleagues who are asking for your support and in their everyday work. But let me, one question before I open the discussion, that is the Charter of Fundamental Rights. What is in the Charter of Fundamental, because it's a legal binding bill, since 10 years, and how can we use this charter concretely in our work?
Well, first, what is the Charter? The Charter is the EU Bill of Rights. Bill of Rights, that's what we use as a term in, let's say, the United States. It's the foundational list of the values to which we're committed. And shockingly, and really worryingly, it is profoundly underused. We survey the use of the Charter on a regular basis every year. We look at its use in the courtrooms, we look at its use in parliaments, we look at its use in government, and invariably we find serious levels of underuse. And so I would like to see you reference the Charter far more in your claims. Take, for example, the action program that you're currently negotiating. If you don't mind an outsider having a comment, I would like to see you referencing a lot more of your claims according to the Charter of Fundamental Rights, because that also gives the claims a certain authority within the legal community of the European Union. But I'm not going to over-talk up the Charter. It's really unclear how many of its provisions apply in practice. Most of the worker-related provisions are in the Solidarity chapter, and it's not clear there to what extent those provisions have direct effect or bind employers with regard to employees. The only way we're going to figure out the answers to those questions is by getting the European Court of Justice to rule. And trades unions are very well placed to get cases to the court so that we get the guidance. For example, just a few weeks ago, the European Court of Justice ruled that the provisions for paid annual leave have direct horizontal effect. So this provision of the solidarity section of the Charter directly binds the employer on the basis of which the employees that took this case were successful. But we're only going to map out those areas of achievement and success if we bring the cases to the court.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, so I would like now to ask you, if you have questions, comments, remarks, please take the microphone. And you know the rule, not more than 2 to 3 minutes. Who would like to speak? I know that a colleague, Carlos Moreira, wanted to speak, that I was informed that he wanted to take the mic. See in?
Para mim é muito importante discutir a Europa enquanto uma Europa de povos, uma Europa aberta, uma Europa livre, onde a juventude tem a possibilidade de circular e tem a possibilidade de viver sem fronteiras. Embora cada um de nós venha do seu país e tenha a sua realidade cultural, hoje a maioria dos jovens procura dentro da Europa um espaço onde pode trabalhar, onde pode aprender novas línguas, onde pode conhecer gente e pessoas de tantas áreas e tantas zonas do planeta que efetivamente nos permite ter uma visão global do planeta. Portanto, a Europa é mais do que a Europa é de facto a porta do planeta, é a porta do mundo onde todos nos encontramos. E cada vez mais a defesa dos direitos individuais e o direito daquilo que são os fundamentais para o ser humano é importantíssimo numa Europa onde está envelhecida e onde o ataque à autonomia, ao nosso movimento, ao movimento sindical, se faz diariamente. Não é por acaso que são os sindicalistas que são sempre os primeiros a ser atacados quando os movimentos populistas tomam o poder. Não é por acaso que os direitos dos trabalhadores são aqueles que são atacados na primeira instância quando estes movimentos populistas e estes partidos de direita entram nos governos e procuram limitar a nossa capacidade de negociar. Daí a minha pergunta ser muito clara. Mais do que uma carta ou mais do que um documento escrito, aquilo que eu pedia aqui no Congresso é que nos uníssemos e que de facto conseguíssemos fazer com que a Comunidade Europeia e a Comissão Europeia tivesse uma ação mais eficaz contra o populismo, contra os governos que são populistas e contra os governos que atacam diariamente os direitos fundamentais dos trabalhadores, não só dos homens, mas também das mulheres, dos jovens, dos menos jovens. Porque sem uma Europa social, sem uma Europa onde exista uma segurança social forte, não é possível. E daí a minha pergunta ser neste sentido. É possível ou não ter uma ação concertada a nível europeu, onde a Confederação Europeia de Sindicatos possa ser o guia desta ação concertada? Muito obrigado.
I think it was more a statement than a question. Yeah. But I would say I made reference in my very brief introductory remarks to the need for a rule of law Europe. And that's what I was speaking about. I was speaking about a pushback against the restrictions on trade unionism, the narrowing of the space in which civil society can thrive, the cancer of populism. And this is a very serious issue and we don't have the solutions on the table. I see ideas being generated. I see initiatives in the EU at the Commission level, the Parliament level, the Council level, but they have still all of them to come to fruition. So there's absolutely no room for complacency.